You're listening to the Feral House Podcast, a semi-regular discussion of books with the authors who wrote them.
Hello, friends and fiends. It's Christina here, and it's another edition of the Feral House Podcast. My guest today will be Michael Lee Nirenberg, author of Cinematic Immunity. And that subtitle is, in case you can't see it, An Oral History of New York Filmmaking as Told by the Crews That Got the Shot. Michael's a friend, as well as an author. This is his second book for us. And I'm just so excited about this one. Michael and I have been working really, really hard. A lot of editing. We're going to talk about that. But I think what you have in Cinematic Community is a book like no other. Nobody's ever done a film book this way because it's from the crew perspective. So years ago, if you liked a book called Raging Bulls and Easy Riders that especially focused on 70s, 60s, 70s film, this one goes cinematic music goes into the 80s and 90s. But if you like that style of learning behind the scenes things, you're going to want to read Cinematic Community because it goes behind the scenes and not to the actors and directors, but to the crew guys, the best boys, the gaffers, the scenic designers, the guys who really, and women who really get things made. So that's coming up. As always, I start these off a little bit of housekeeping. We are in the midst of a transition at Feral House, where after Adam sadly died in May of 2018, his sister Jessica, who alongside me, we'd always worked with Adam. I became more of the front facing because Jessica, it wasn't her thing. But as of this year, Jessica's going to retire, which is great. But, everybody should have that opportunity to retire. And in doing so, then I will continue running Feral House. We're excited and I say we because I have a husband, and Dan is going to be helping. So you might see his name pop up a little bit more in the behind the scenes, taking on some of the operations. We have a plan for some improvements, some different things for Feral House. Nothing that strays too far from what Adam created, because that's kind of where I am, how I became involved with it, is Adam and I share some taste and aesthetics. But we're in the midst of rebuilding our website, and not just kind of rebuilding the skin, but rebuilding the whole back end of it too. What this is going to mean for you is in maybe a month to 6 weeks, ordering is going to be easier. It's going to have more shipping options because the postage rates in the United States are just extortionate at this point in time. So we're going to try to incorporate a few more shipping rates available to people, as well as just more events. That's something that we're doing. We're getting out into the streets and starting to meet people where we are. To that end, we're going to be taking part in the World of Oddities Expo in Chicago on April 11th and 12th. That'll be kind of interesting. And it's our first time doing that, so I'll report back and see how that went. And if you're in Chicago, if you're planning on attending the World of Oddities Expo, come down and say hello. I'm planning on bringing a lot of our, of course, new releases, classics, but, and this is another tease for the new website and upcoming, is in cleaning out the warehouse in Port Townsend, Washington, which is where Adam lived, there are some treasures I've been discovering. And so those treasures, we're going to make them available to you. Some long out of print books, I find, a dozen copies, just weird stuff. And we're going to do our best to kind of do some small, just spot sales. We'll announce it, and when they're gone, they're gone. Those things. If there was something that you were looking for, because I know you are long-term fans, before we just make it public, if you're seeing this, there's something that you were looking for, an old out-of-print book, send me an email, because I may have dug up a few copies, and I'm happy to pass them along. So those are things to look forward to, and we're going to be bringing some of those old old backlist collectible copies to World of Oddities as well. So that'll be fun and exciting. And I'll be sharing some of those discoveries in the warehouse with everybody. Adam never threw anything away. And in that means that there's lots of great pictures and correspondence and just weird stuff, and it's lots of fun. So I look forward to sharing that all with you. Again, we've got a lot of books coming out this spring, and so we're going to start with cinematic immunity. We're going to talk to Michael, but I just really quick coming out, The Clean, co-production with the University of Auckland in New Zealand. The Clean. If you're a fan, go get it. This is out already, just out recently, Zodiac actually. And you can go back and listen to a previous episode of the podcast to hear me speak with Eddie. This one's been causing a little trouble in the Zodiac killer kind of subreddits and community. And I say, good, good. People should always be challenged. And then this is coming out in May. I Ate His Heart, Interviews with a Cannibal. Yes, literal interviews with a cannibal. So that's what's coming up. And again, keep on listening. This is just my small housekeeping introduction, because coming up is Michael Lee Nirenberg talking about cinematic immunity. Thanks, everyone. Welcome, everyone, back to another edition of the Feral House podcast. With me today is my friend, Michael Nirenberg. I'm really happy that Michael is here, and we're going to have this conversation about his new book coming out, Cinematic Immunity. You see it behind me. I've got it right here. This is one of those books that is not just years in the making, a lifetime in the making. And the subtitle is, of course, An Oral History of New York Filmmaking as Told by the Crews That Got the Shot. And so it gives you an inkling as to what the book is about. But without any further me chatting about it, I'm going to let Michael tell you what the book is about.
It's interviews with the crew themselves, the crew that you never hear from. The gaffers, the best boys, the prop department, the hairdressers, all the people you never hear from. In fact, I even got the insect wrangler, for one of our New York insect wranglers. He's just the guy you go to for insects, but it's not just about insects. Of course, it's about the production assistants, all the people that, and a lot of these people have moved up in their careers. They're no longer assistants. Today they're the production designers and the art directors and the first assistant directors, and they're higher up in their careers or they're retired now.
So, and what this becomes then is this film history that is told not by the directors or the screenwriters or the famous actors, where you get a lot of, I'll call it coloring, because those people at the high end of the business are super invested into the image that's portrayed. The guys that Michael talked to are the guys, they're the working class of the filmmaking kind of ecosystem. And these guys, a lot of them, Michael, are many of them still working, or are they mostly retired, or is it a combination?
Yeah, it's a combination. It's a mixed bag. A
Yeah.
lot of them are friends of mine. I'm about 20 years into the business, so some of them were people I met early on. Some of them are people I never met. Some people were
So
like, "Oh, have you spoken to this guy?"
yeah. So I'm going to rewind because we told you what the book is about. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about how this came to be, which I think is always something more interesting. So I've known Michael for over a decade. And Michael, as you've just noticed, and he's mentioned, he does work in the film industry in New York, but he's, also obviously a writer. His first book in 2020 called Earth AD, which was again an oral history of the environmental, not just environmental movements, but very specific to how effective or ineffective the public can be about making change. And it's fascinating. And it's one of those books that I think was overlooked because of the pandemic, but it's still in print. So y'all can go and still look at Earth AD. So I'm used to working with Michael because he and I did the editing on that first one. So when he proposed this idea to me that he's working on these, taking these histories, making recordings, interviewing, how many hours of interviews did you do, Michael?
I don't know, but I think it's somewhere over 150 because I interviewed about 100 people, and about six of those people who were very good, they didn't make it in.
Uh,
But some of them I interviewed, like Gary Muller, for example, I interviewed him six times because he was so good. So it's hundreds of hours. It's a couple hundred hours of recording at least.
yeah, and so I want people to know that so they understand the scope of what goes into kind of making a book of oral histories. There's a common myth that people like, oh, oral histories, that's an easy book to write. All I have to do is write down what people say. Michael, would you like to disabuse people of that myth?
No, it's actually true. It's pretty hacky. You just like some people say stuff to you and you just cut it up. And no, it's more like film editing. It's a lot closer to film editing because you're taking things people say, but it's incredibly tricky because the way people talk, and we've discussed this a lot, you and I, that the way people talk is not how it comes off on the page. So you have to clean that up and make it readable, and then you have to cut it up in such a way where all the interlocking parts match. So it's more like puzzle pieces than writing in many ways, but it comes off like writing because you have words on a page. So
So
it's
it's really an edit job is what it is. A really, so obviously the collection, I couldn't ask the same questions that you could because so you had some specialized knowledge going in.
right.
You had the access, and you had the opportunity. And then what you ended up with was that 150 plus hours of interviews. And when that was all transcribed, about how, do you remember about how many words when it was just like fresh, raw baby transcripts?
I,
How big
oh,
was it?
I'd say every transcript was anywhere between 4 to 10,000 words when I would get them back. And I think what I first showed you was like, I don't know, what was it, like 200,000? It was like 150,000 words or something. It was an insane.
Oh, it was almost 300. It was almost 300,000 words. It was
I
just, I think it was
cringe.
289. And so I get this 280, this manuscript. We wanted to do this, and Michael and I had already been in talk. We're going to work on this book. And the first draft was like, oh, Jiminy Crickets. Oh, Jeezy Crazy. That's going to be that. So
We we
that's one of
knew
the
we
first
knew what it was
things.
going to be like, though.
Yeah,
I
we
mean, we knew it
knew.
was going to be like a lot, and I needed help at that point because I couldn't see, I couldn't prioritize it anymore. What was
And
going to,
and we're talking about the process because I really want to drill down on that because when people read the finished book, they don't always understand or see all the work that goes into it. And it's not about patting myself or Michael on the back, but just so you know, as readers, like what went into it. So we go through this process of editing and we're cutting and we're killing babies, is the kind of the
Mhm.
editorial thing is because after a few times, is there weaker material than stronger material? Sure, you're assessing for that. But at the same time, if you're doing it right, you've got all killer material and too much of it. So let's talk about for a minute what's some of your favorites that got cut out.
Um, there's a movie called Wise Guys, which was not incredibly, I think it was popular at the time. It had like Piscopo, Captain Lou Albano, and there's a great counterfeiting story in there of my friend's dad. He had all of this fake money, and then the FBI was looking for it. I don't know if you even saw this one. I don't know because it didn't have a lot of heat. It just had this one story. So um, and so the FBI or the Treasury Department was watching him and they were following him around. He had to go hide the money and then he puts it on an anchor on a boat and he just sinks it eventually. Well, first he thought his son stole it. That kind of thing was in there. Those kinds of things. Another one was New York Undercover. My friend Troy, they had like a lot of music guests. They had like Tito Puente and Celia Cruz and Mary J. Blige, all these great people. So when Stevie Wonder was there, he this my friend was a prop guy. He There's one bathroom in the whole building. Stevie Wonder has to use it as well as the Teamsters. Everyone uses this one bathroom. So Stevie Wonder goes, can you take Stevie to the bathroom? Takes him to the bathroom and he goes and he's like, "Hey Stevie, did you ever hear that joke about when does Stevie Wonder know when he's finished?" And I don't even remember what the joke is, but because he's blind, he's doing a blind Stevie Wonder joke to Stevie Wonder. So Stevie kind of laughs, he helps him wash his hands and everything. He kind of walks him out, and the bodyguard, his sort of minder, says to my friend Troy, he goes, "There's something wrong with you." And my friend Troy says, "I know. My dad tells me every day." And he's like, "No, I've known Stevie for 25 years and I would never say that to him." He's like, "Yeah, I get that a lot."
See, now this is a great story that leads us into like it's just a ridiculous story because this goes into like so you work in your industry and you're around like famous people, to some extent. I'm not. So is there like kind of do you still get a charge or do you have to teach yourself to like calm down? Because this goes to like what the title is. What does cinematic immunity mean? How does this all work together?
Well, there's two questions there. Yes, I do sometimes get a charge if it's I know who they are. I often don't know who people are because I'm really out of touch and I have a little bit of face blindness. Like if I don't know someone like well, or if they're not like tabloid famous, like Tom Cruise famous or something, then I don't really know who they are a lot of the time. So it doesn't really mean anything. One time I was on the beach with the guy 007. Who is the guy's name? I'm forgetting it now even.
Which
The
one?
guy the
Pierce
famous
Brosnan? Daniel
yeah, here's
Craig?
Brosnan. So I'm on the beach and I'm talking to this guy and I'm just sitting there, right? And he's talking to me and I was like, I thought he was just like a handsome LA producer. I had not seen those movies at the time. And it was a movie called like, I think it was called The Greatest. I'm there, I'm kicking it with him. And we're just talking about life and watching the waves in about 45 minutes or something. And then people started acting really weird towards me. And I was like, what's going on? They're like, how do you know Pierce? And I'm like, who's Pierce? I was just day playing on a job. I didn't know the movie. I didn't understand any. I was so like naive, but it was a lot of fun. I was like, what a cool guy that was, you know? Never caught his name, just kind of moved on, did some work, whatever. And that's just so I do. It was cool to find out that it was double. I mean, it was like interesting later and a great story now, but it's not. I liked meeting John Waters was great when he played a pornographer on SVU. People that I really like and I mean John Waters is a personal favorite and hero of mine, but usually I don't know who they are. And
Mm.
okay, so the second part of your question, which was what is cinematic community? That is when you just can especially it's used in the context of going to a location, you go to a town and the laws and the rules don't apply to you. I have cinematic immunity. I can do whatever I want. So rules are sort of flouted. People, they're ignored. Um, Laws, cops kind of let you do what you want. It's kind of that cinematic immunity, and everyone suffers from it a little bit. Especially, I mean, this is an industry where the AD department yells out, "Cars moving," because people are so oblivious to the real world that they just walk out into the middle of the street, even though we have a scene with like a car chase or something, or even just like a regular day, like cop cars backing up, cars moving. That's cinematic immunity. This oblivious quality that we have.
No, see, I kind of take it a little further because you told this like you talked to Pierce Brosnan on a beach, Troy making jokes to Stevie Wonder jokes to Steve is so meta. Is I don't think that like a civilian, someone who's not in the industry or has that proximity, wouldn't cross that boundary. They wouldn't just do that thing because you're fame struck a little bit. So I think that comes in my mind, at least, that's part of that cinematic immunity is that ability to kind of traverse and code switch, to misuse the term, between the working, just kind of the working, doing the work, and then how that work looks to outsiders. So
Well, the, just one note I would say on that is I've worked with Mariska Hargitay from SVU for like 10 years, and I behave a little differently around her. Not because I'm in awe or anything, because she's the boss. And
right,
I don't
well,
want to say anything too fucked up to get
but
me
that's
or my department
anybody.
in trouble.
But that's
That's
anybody who's not going to do that in front of the boss.
So there's that. I mean, that's part
Sure.
of it. And I think it's less to do with her fame, although I am a little charmed by the fame like anyone else. I think I talked about this, I did talk about this in the introduction, that it's complicated because there's a little bit of that. There's a little, even the hardened veterans, you could tell they'll when tell a story and Robert Redford was there or something, they feel like they're a little bit still a little starstruck.
Yeah, you get that in the book. So, because there's great stories in the book, some of the favorite movies. I'm just, and you could tell in the guys, and there's women and men. In the earlier films, it's mostly men, just before the
Mhm.
industry really started opening up to women. But you hear the stories, you could see just as you're reading through it, the times where the guys are a little starstruck when they probably put up with more bullshit than you would if you were working in a factory because of what you're doing and who you're working with. Um, did that come any clearer, like when you guys are talking, um, or when you were interviewing folks? Did people ever mention that specifically, that they would change their behavior, or they were more tolerant to bad ideas and doing dangerous, crazier stuff because of who was asking? It was a famous director. It was I'm thinking too, one of the stories in there of the Ishtar War between Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman. And just, from that, so I guess I'm going was from that crew perspective. Are people more tolerant of that kind of diva-like or bad behavior or insane requests?
I think yes and no. I think to a certain degree, yes, because I think of like Dean Toucher's story about Michael Mann, and he said it was on Manhunter, and that it was like a cult, and that he was like a screamy, yelly sort of prick, and that people were very much like who you were in the cult or you were out of the cult. And so the people who were in the cult would do dangerous things. He wanted things done a certain way, and often it was very stupid. A lot of gunplay, a lot of, now we wouldn't tolerate a lot of things they did then. But also, no, I think that and then there's a lot of people who are like, fuck that. I'm not doing that. And that's acceptable too. To say, no, fuck that is a perfectly acceptable answer to a lot of very stupid requests. So it cuts both ways.
I was thinking about that and just reviewing that. It's funny. I have a couple of favorite movies, and what's the funniest thing about working on editing it, as well as then the book itself, and I'm so excited for people to read this, is the worst movies, or actually not the worst, not great movies, sometimes produce the most interesting stories in the background and everything. So I have just an inordinate love of the movie Wolfen. And there's a fairly larger section on Wolfen because what these people went through, both the actors, the director, and all the crew, is nuts. Like you just mentioned, it couldn't be done today. A lot of what they were doing. So, what do you think is the chemistry? What happens to make a film that where everybody's just working so hard and they're technologically advanced, doing all the right things, but yet the end result isn't great? How do crews react to that, or do they even?
It's a good question, and nobody knows is the answer. Like Wolfen is, I think it's the longest chapter in the book. Maybe cruising comes close. Another one, like, oh my God, cruising is bananas. And
Yeah,
You made Wolfen the sample chapter because you love it so much, and you were the one to tell
exactly.
me that people love this movie. I thought it was fine. I didn't like hate it, didn't really love it. I thought it was good. It was, but but if I were to see it again, I'd watch it maybe with your perspective in mind, be like, what is she seeing in this movie? But I've had this with a lot of movies that I love, and people are like, that's the movie you like, Um, wait, what was the question?
I think that like, do crews feel let down really, or do they
Oh,
have like
oh,
a
oh,
take on like
yes.
when they see that you work so hard on something, you have
Right.
a good time, all of that, stuff, and then the movie's like, eh.
I remember where I was going with this now. And it's that I closed every one of my interviews with this question, how do you make a good movie? Because I know it's a bullshit question. I know that you can't answer it. And if you do, you'll be able to find the exception pretty easily, if you really think about the question. But the only answer that I found pretty consistent with most of the people I interviewed was, which was a good script. Because if you
Mm.
don't have the bones there of a good movie, you don't have a movie. And I think it's an acceptable answer. It makes sense. I don't know if it's true. I think a lot of great scripts don't become great movies. No one
Right.
knows what the magic is. How do you make a great record? How do you make a great painting? How do you make a
How do you
great
make a
poem?
great book? Yeah.
Exactly. We don't know. If we did, I think a lot about the House of Cards example that Netflix took all the data that they accumulated for their whole entire run up to that point, what were the most popular movies, who were the most popular actors, this and that, and they assembled House of Cards out of um, data harvesting.
I had no idea.
So they were like, "Oh, this is how you make a perfect movie." So season one of House of Cards is quite good.
Yeah.
Is it the greatest movie ever made? No, I don't think anyone really ranks it that high. I mean, maybe they do, but not that I
I
know
mean,
of.
I don't know if it's like one of those where people go and rewatch it, where a lot of times like a favorite old series or favorite old movie, you'll rewatch it a number of times. And so
Yeah,
I think that's one of those the kind of markers of at least personal ranking, whether it's good or bad, is if it can, go through sustained rewatching. Um, but I think that after working on this book, I started watching some of the films. And I think I recommend people do that. Get the book, whether you buy it or you get it from the library. I always make my pitch for libraries.
yeah,
Then read the chapter about the book and then go watch the movie again. And aside from wanting to watch through the whole credits so you can see the names of the people who are interviewed in the book, to me it was really revelatory in watching, say, something like Cruising, as you mentioned, again, after then knowing everything that went on it. So did you do that too as you were doing these interviews? Did you start rewatching movies?
yes. But to be honest, I never finished. Like there was just too many, and I work too much, and I work on this book all the time, and I got kids, and I got this and that. And by the time I get to a point where I'm gonna watch a movie, and I'm like thinking, okay, well, I can't watch a movie for work. It's work. But to be honest, there's a few I've never seen. Like I really like the chapter on Mo Better Blues, and I might watch it. Maybe I'll watch it tonight, but I've never seen it. So there's a few in there I haven't seen. Like Home Alone 2, maybe I saw when it came out. I don't remember. There's a
Yeah, I've
few
never
like
seen that
that.
one.
There's a few that are excellent that I like that I rewatched or had never seen. Something like Raising Arizona. That what a great movie, and I didn't really know how great it was until I rewatched it. So that's nice. And then you watch it with this perspective in mind. You're like, wow, this is how they did this thing or whatever.
Yeah, I think, and knowing how the magic is made is such an intriguing idea to any of us not working in film. We always want that behind the scenes. So one of the things that I had in both editing and then reading the final book was some of the actors and some of the directors and the crew. You get to know them because they're working on multiple films, and you get to see them in different environments, as well as then in, as you mentioned earlier, they start at one place and then over the years they kind of grow into different jobs. And so one of the people that really, I guess, I liked to begin with as an actor, I respected his work, but I really started to like him based on the stories being told about Albert Finney. I thought that was a really interesting thing about and very humanizing for both Finney, and there's a number of actors that are talked about, and some of the directors too. And it's a very humanizing kind of book because nobody is, what the old saying, nobody's a hero to his valet. And so because you've stripped off all of the glamour of filmmaking in these interviews, everybody is a human being. I mean, could you speak to that? Was that intentional at all?
I wouldn't say it was intentional. I didn't really know that that would be a thing. I didn't really think about it much until I found that there was this little group around Mike Burke, the electrician, Rusty Engels, his gaffer. I mean, Mike became a gaffer later when I met him. Um, but Mike and Rusty and Albert Finney and a group of those guys wilding out all the time from Wolfen to Miller's Crossing. And Albert Finney just loved those electricians, and they would always go out and get drunk and do a bunch of coke, and they need to have all these problems at work the next day because from hanging out with them. And the directors are like, oh, they don't really like him hanging around, but he couldn't help it. He was like, so I grew to like him a lot too. He's not someone I really thought much about or knew his body of work much, but he's a recurring character, and it's like. And I did mention this in the introduction. It was never to like shift to put the perspective on the crews as stars because they're not. All of us are very much behind the scenes. I think quite happy to be behind the scenes. There's a misconception that people in crews wanted to be in front of the camera, and so at some point in their lives, and it's not really true. I think a lot of us really like being behind the camera. I know I do. And I couldn't imagine being an actor and having all that pressure and it just is not my personality. But they, this was just sort of like to pull the spotlight out wider and you could see more of what's in the frame. So the actors are there, but you become friends with these people because you hang around all day. You spend 12 hours a day with someone, you form some important friendships. So and it's very family like in that regard at times, when you're in a movie for 6 months.
Yeah, I think there's some class issues involved as well. Because I mean, just looking up a bit more about Albert Finney, to use an example, is he's English, English Irish working class. He's a working class actor came up in the time in England when there was a place for working class actors to get trained and then move up through the repertory system on the stage and then move into film, where the United States never really had that. But I find that the actors and the directors, the people that came who had more from the working class background, seem to understand how to work with crews a bit better than, say, some of the art school kids. So that is my layman's take on it. What do you have thoughts about that at all?
No, I never really thought about it, but I never thought actually till you mentioned it right now that there was any kind of. I mean, I have thought about the class imbalances. You have someone making millions of dollars a picture. I mean, I see it every day. And then, you're getting like this, and then you're getting the rate that your union negotiates for you or whatever you've negotiated that could be a little higher. There's a chapter I didn't make the book actually that I'd like to publish somewhere about this, how people negotiated jobs and how and the economic side of working on movies and what you're to expect and how people did it. It's kind of fascinating. I didn't think it would be fascinating, but it is to me, the economic. But there are those imbalances, and I don't. And like you said, I never thought about the pipeline through the English system so much, but that's there. I think a lot of it is just like in art school, we didn't have this, but it's maturity. It's like you get to a place in your life where you're like, I have to be with these people for this long every day and might as well just be a cool guy and not be a prick, And I think actors learn that too. I mean, maybe they might come in with some preconceived notions, especially union guys, specific unions like Local 52 had a reputation of being quite tough and being, a bunch of assholes. But they can be very sweet, but they will bust your balls, and make you earn it. I like that.
Yeah.
New York crews get rough. And it's very funny. You get a lot of great nicknames, the whole thing.
Well, that's part of it. It's what's the old saying is New Yorkers are kind but not nice, whereas LA is nice but not kind. So
Yeah.
I think that holds true from doing work on both coasts. It goes to just all of this we're talking about is just such a funny and fun insight into work. I was talking to Rick Cogan from the Chicago Tribune, and by the time you are listening to this podcast, you'll have seen a very nice review of the book by Mr. Rick Cogan. Rick Cogan, from the Chicago Trib, is so Chicago, and so that's why he was very interested in the book, because William Friedkin is a Chicago guy. But what Rick and I talked about, because again, every very Midwestern, us Midwesterners, we all know each other, is Rick's godfather was actually Studs Terkel. And so we were talking about the book Cinematic Immunity in the framing of like Studs Terkel, in that of documentation of work. These ideas that all work has a story behind it, and all workers do. And I really like that Rick kind of caught that right away, because that was something that for me as a thread, I was thinking about while editing. And I know you talked about that early on. Can you talk a little bit about your ideas of the notion of documenting work?
I love this angle of it. And because I'm a union guy, I'm in local 829, the United Scenic Artists Union. And I love this because you think about movies as like play and fun. Like it looks fun. When I was a kid and I watched Pee-wee's Playhouse, I thought that's where I want to be. Like I want to live in that world. And then, or watching three wall sitcoms like Three's Company or whatever, right? And you knew that there was a studio audience there, and you knew that there was a fourth wall, but there's three walls, and you sometimes, like Gary Shandling, they would like put the camera in the dolly and then move behind the sets, right? I love that, and I wanted to live in that world because it looked so fun. It looked different than boring regular life, but it is work, and you learn that pretty quickly. That the hours are long. And then as you get older, you get more responsibilities. You're away from your family a long time, so that is very much there. And I now work in the preparatory crew, so we're prepping the episodes for, we're prepping episode 21, and then they're going to go shoot episode 21 like next week. So we're ahead of them, and I'm like in a more workaday side of it now. But for years, I worked on set next to the camera as the on-set scenic artist, and those are long hours, and you shoot into the middle of the night. But a few thoughts I have here. Like this is a big aspect of my work, is sort of documenting work like Studs Terkel's work. Is there working? Work. I think it's working.
Work. Yeah.
And like I'm making a movie now, making a documentary now about a carpenter who worked on the Woody Allen jobs, and he was a jailbird, and he's been in and out prison his whole life, shooting dope into his arm the whole time. He started the weed growing operation for the Hasidic community here in New York, and he's just a fascinating figure. I could go on and on about him, making a documentary about him, but it's under the idea as work. He just does different kinds of work. All the people in this book were just working. It's very important to my own work, as it were.
And I saw that right away. Again, fans of Feral House know from reading newsletters and things like that, I will always be the one to talk about the working classes because I'm one of them.
Yeah,
So I thought that was a really great thing that came out, and I'm so glad that other people are seeing that. That means you and I, we did a good job.
yeah,
If some of the themes, some of the
that's
things
important.
that we wanted people to take away, they are taking away. And again, not self-congratulatory, but more like, yay, we didn't fuck it up. Because that's usually what my bar is. Don't fuck it up.
Yeah, I worry about it too.
Yeah. So we're kind of, because we are old friends, we are just kind of goofing around and talking a lot. We could go on for hours, but there is something that I demanded be in the book that we had to go through, which was a glossary. A lot of film fans will know what some of these words are, but a lot of folks won't. And so you even mentioned the grips, the gaffers. What does a gaffer do, Michael?
Oh yeah, it's a fun sounding word like best boy.
Yeah.
I can explain both of those. So the gaffer is the head of the lighting department. So the gaffer sits next to the director of photography, and or usually stands. He should have a chair. I always thought it's fucked up the gaffer doesn't have a chair with his name on it because he's important, really important. So the
Yeah.
director of photography looks at the monitor, or used to look through the camera lens, and and he looks at the lighting, and the director of photography is in charge of the photography department. But what's not known so well is he's in charge of the lighting department, and so the gaffer reports directly to the director of photography. And I've worked with so many great gaffers that, in my view, the director of photography gets all the credit, right? The DP, the cinematographer. But everyone really needs a good gaffer. You can't be a good DP without an incredible gaffer. And that's someone who sees what the shot is and could be like, all right, we're gonna put a 10K to simulate daylight behind this window to simulate daylight, where then we're gonna put a kicker over here and use all these terms for lights. But what they're doing is just lighting a shot in a few classic ways. It's like usually there's like one in the back, one in the front, something on the sides, or bounce. That's Yeah, I could be mistaken, but I think that's most sets are more or less like that. A best
Right.
boy, which people always ask,
Yeah.
there's a couple. The best boy is like there's a grip best boy and a gaffer best boy. And the lighting department electrician best boy, he's an electrician, but he's like the second down. So he's like the second below the gaffer, usually. I could be mistaken. I don't know if he's the second, but he's somewhere high up in the lighting department, and he does the time cards, he orders the supplies, the different kinds of bulbs they use and equipment, and make sure they have the right stands and this and that and the other. The grip best boy is like the same thing. They are have to take a managerial role for the grip department. Another way of looking at this is electricians create light and grips block light. And
Oh,
once I learned that early on, I recommend this book to people who are in film school or about to get out of film school or just want to make movies, because there's a lot of sort of basic technical information that took me years to learn. And in fact, I learned a lot 20 years into my career and talking to these people in this book, because how do you know everything? You don't. And a lot of things haven't changed.
right.
That's still true. You still need light, you still need a camera, and you still need microphones.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm always curious. So, do you know the origination of like Best Boy? How did that come about? Do you know?
No
I mean, is
idea.
there any
No
lore?
idea. You're right. I,
Okay.
I have no idea.
It's like I don't know why. I know why I call my cat Big Boy, but that's
I don't know if Best Boy they're still even using it. I mean, we've made some strides into equality in this century, so I don't know if we're still using Best Boy. Maybe we're not. I've been on this old TV show for so long, I don't know what it's like out there anymore.
yeah. And so another aspect, and then we're gonna wrap things up so we
Sure.
don't start boring people. Is you mentioned you're working on a documentary, and it's something you've spent how long working on this book from like kind of start to finish? How long did it take you?
Oh, 5. So I started in October 2020, and Earthy did come out, I think, in June or July. And then I spent the summer just trying some things out. Not quite, and it was depressing. It was like the pandemic. I live in New York. The Black Lives Matter protests were happening. It had the vibe of the 60s. Um, and I mean, I wasn't around the 60s, just what I've read about the 60s. But uh, I couldn't, I couldn't find anything. And then I had this idea for this book, but originally years ago, it was a documentary idea. In the introduction, I write that the 2015 New Year's turning into 2016, I worked at NBC, and this lady I worked with told me, she's like, "I ever tell you my favorite old man story? I'll relay it here." Which is, I was like, "No, what is it?" On the Jackie Gleason show, there's a janitor, and he's sweeping up, and he drops dead. And the grips, they pull him, they put him behind the set, they shoot the show. They're like, fuck him, he's dead, the show must go on. They shoot the Jackie Gleason show with this dead janitor behind the flats, behind the set. They wrap. Okay, now we'll get the ambulance or whatever, whoever they called. And that's when the book started. I didn't know it for another, you know, however long it's been, but for another, I guess that would be another 5 years. I didn't really know it was going to be a book. but that's when it started because I was like, that is what I love about the business. It's got everything.
Yeah. It's a wild story just to think about it. Let's hope that doesn't happen today.
No, I don't want to die on the set.
Yeah. So we've talked about you're working on the documentary and how long it's taken you. And I hope that you're enjoying a little bit of the hard work being over. And this, I like to tell authors that this is the fun part, to talk about the work. Now that the work is over, now you get to talk about it with lots of different people. And I welcome everybody listening or watching today to check out Cinematic Community. I think you're really going to love this one, and look for more events. Probably, kind of throughout the year. You guys know how we roll. I don't just jam everything up right when the book comes out. So throughout the year, we'll be doing fun stuff, whether it's events and more interviews and podcasts and all of that stuff. So you'll be hearing more from Michael and more about Cinematic Community. Any last words to the Feral Fiends?
Uh, I talk a ton of shit on Instagram. I used to use Twitter a lot, but it's so fascisty on there. I'm like not feeling it so much. But if you want to stay in touch, um, I'm pretty active on Instagram. It's Nirenberg, Nirenberg .v2. That's important because I have a private one I hardly ever look at with my kids and stuff. Then I have a public one where I talk a ton of shit, but mostly music, mostly records.
Sure.
But
So yeah,
so that's
that's a
where
secret.
that's where I'm keeping in touch with people about, the events and all the stuff that
And
we're
and subscribing to the Feral House newsletter will get you information on stuff. Follow Michael on Instagram to learn
I
more
write
and
it
hear what
I
kind of
write it down. I'll write it down.
uh, will
I
to hear
will.
what kind of shit he talks. And so we'll make sure and put maybe a link or something, and then we'll see how many weirdos you get following
I
you.
love
But
it.
no, but not you probably not from the feral side. Most of
No,
our fans are pretty. We're all kind of weird in the same way.
I started as
So
a fan. I
I,
read I read like in 2001, 2, 3 in there. I read the Germs book. And
yeah.
then I read Lords of Chaos somewhere in there. And then I was like, wow, all the cool books are coming out of this one publisher. And then I got to know you and Adam a little bit, and then here we are.
Yeah. Well, Steve Albini had a phrase for this. He called it an ascended fan. So,
Yeah, yeah, I was a fan. Henry Rollins got to join his favorite band.
yeah,
So
so
it
that's
happens.
it happens and it's a good thing. So, again, thanks to everybody for listening and watching today. This is our monthly podcast we put out usually towards the third or fourth week of the month. And you'll see this one and coming out with the newsletter very soon. Thanks again. And as always, you can listen to any of the archive programs or follow us or hate us or do whatever. What was my favorite one? Somebody sent me an email calling me a commie mommy. That's when I make that joke. I hadn't heard that one. And I'm like, commie mommy, you have no idea. So, again, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Hey fiends, thanks for listening to the Feral House podcast. We do this about once a month, talking to Feral House and Process Media writers, as well as members of the extended Feral family. You're part of the family. Let us know if you have any questions or if you have an idea of someone we should talk to. You can send me a note at press@feralhouse.com, press@feralhouse.com.
It's the wondrous world